5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on a Sunday. We are on week 4 of the Global Empowerment Summit 2021 with the theme, The Young and the Wise, Be Bold Together. We have another week to go before the entire 5-week summit ends. And today our topic is creative leadership. As you can see, we have got 3 people right here probably practicing creative leadership, and let's look at the extensiveness of how much they actually practice, or do they actually believe in creative leadership. That's a question that we will be asking them and we will be listening into. Now, to kickstart, let me give a little bit of introduction on our 3 panelists today. We have Manoj. Manoj is dialing in from Vancouver, did you say?
That's right, Vancouver, Canada, yeah.
Yeah, so hi Manoj, it's 11 p.m. It's 11 p.m. in Vancouver, so thank you for joining us. Manoj is the Chief Innovation Officer at Chatra Nodal, a boutique big data and AI consulting company that provides strategic insights and develops problem-solving digital solutions for businesses of all sizes. The past 25 years, the company has been able to deal with some big names and work with the biggest names like IBM, Microsoft, Pearson Education, Canada Health, Infoway, and the University of British Columbia, among others. Now, obviously, I read something very interesting that Manoj is actually a thinker and he likes to think out of the box. So very, very appropriate, exploring unconventional methodologies to solve complex problems fast and right. Hence, we surely want to know what you think and your ideas on creative leadership. Welcome, Manoj.
Thank you so much.
Right. Next, we have Nigesh. Right. Nigesh is closer to me at home. Nigesh is in Kuala Lumpur. Nigesh is a person driven by the purpose of adding value to others. Nigesh is from Leadernomics. Hence guided him with a long career in the field of project management, marketing, engineering, media, and people development. That's quite a bit of a variety of industry, Nigesh, I see.
Yep.
But you're currently heading the solutions and services at the Leadernomics Digital, right? Leading the business team so that you look forward, and we look forward in understanding the big creative leader that you are, and if it's the way moving forward for emerging leaders, especially out there for those in the digital arena. So we will talk to you shortly, Nigesh, and welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Last but not
Thank you.
least, yes, I'm not biased, and I am okay, and so I left my friend last but not least. My friend Mallory Loon is currently the co-founder of Work Inspires, a people engagement and development company working with organizations across 8 countries. You would think that she is much older, but she's not. So she started very young. She's also a 3-time TEDx speaker and awarded coach through World Human Resources Development Congress. And she contributes to society by, you would often see her on LinkedIn, mentoring youth and giving back to society. Although I would still say that Mallory is very much a youth herself, right? So what's creative leadership to her, and how you maneuver, Mallory, and stand tall? I see that you're standing tall with the big boys now. So I would want to definitely hear from you soon. So welcome, Mallory.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we're going to have an interesting conversation today, and the topic itself is very, very interesting. We talk about creative leadership. Having been in a leadership role for so long, still holding on to leadership titles, I myself am very, very keen to listen to your thoughts on creative leadership. Now, let me read out to you something that I read this morning on creative leadership. It says here that creative leadership is a style of leadership based upon the concept of working cooperatively cooperatively, to develop innovative ideas. Keyword here, I would say, is innovative. Those who employ creative leadership tends to do so by creating conditions which promote creativity. Nigesh, probably you could share from the leadernomics point of view, because of the diverse subjects that you guys take on, the diverse topics that you guys cover, and you are, in fact, when you talk about leadernomics, the word leader even appears there. So, what do you think of this description, and what is creative leadership meaning to you from an organization point of view, narrowing down to you personally?
So I know that it's becoming a buzzword per se to say creative leadership, or to put something in front of leadership to say that, oh, this is a new way of leadership. But I think creative leadership is just one of the methods that you got to use depending on situations that you are in. And especially organizations, nothing stays static. Nothing stays static in any organization. Things keep on moving, things keep on changing, whether operationally, whether business-wise, or most importantly, the people mix that are coming in. I think one of the biggest shift that is going to be happening right now, and it's going to be very important for people to actually think of how they lead individuals, is the generational shift that's going to happen. So we know that right now in the workforce, we have majority Gen X's, some baby boomers, and Gen Ys who are in the workforce. But in the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to have an influx of the Zs and more Ys, to them being about 60% of the workforce and the marketplace itself. So these are individuals who work differently from before. So when we say creative leadership, it is how do you, from time to time, as you're looking at shifts, keep yourself on the edge. When I say on the edge, means that you're ready to actually take a step to the next ledge per se, and not just say that, okay, no, when they come in, they've got to follow these set of values, these set of rules, these set of way of doing things. This is how I've done things before. This is how it's going to work. No, from experience, even as short as 3 years ago, a style which I may have used then just don't work right now. So I've got to change it up. So creative leadership is essentially when we show other people, when we tell them to bring it to themselves, is think about the other person you're dealing with. Think about the environment around the other person. Think about the environment that is wrapping you. And then how are you going to form the next steps forward for both yourself and the other person that you're dealing with?
You said, which resonates. One is actually that nothing is static at this moment, yeah. And I think we have been seeing that with the multitude of changes and the drastic changes that's been happening, especially in terms of timing. Last time, it used to take quite a while before change happened, and suddenly everything seems to be happening too fast that I think before we even, I think it's now faster than our iPhones change, right? Or your phones, get upgraded. So
Absolutely.
So it's one of it was that, and obviously the other thing that I picked up was something that everyone is talking about, the lookout for the new Mallories that are coming in, because we're talking about the shift generation where with more Zs and eventually also more Ys coming into display. So Mallory, you belong to that generation, right? And you probably have not got what Manoj will probably share later on of how leadership was prior to this, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where Manoj started, and leadership was much, much more different then. So before we hear to Manoj, Mallory, you are now thrown into the deep end of the sea, where you are obviously already into being creative. Otherwise, can you survive without being creative? And what is creativity to you?
Okay, I think creativity today might be a bit overstretching. I give you an example, because as an entrepreneur, a lot of people say that entrepreneurs, you need to be creative, because if you're not creative, you can't survive. But on the other hand, which sets the tone that you put yourself in the area where creativity is like a next big thing. You gotta be a next, today what you call metaverse, right? It's no longer Facebook, right? So you gotta be the next meta, you gotta be the next alphabet, you gotta be the next something. But on the other hand, creativity is simply to us about finding an effective way of solutions to solve problems that organizations face in our business. Effective way is the keyword. Creativity is subjective to many kinds. I give you an example. To some companies, StreamYard is the new most biggest modern thing in the world they've ever seen. But to some millennials, it's like, I use this for gaming all the time. What is this? new. So you have to understand that when it comes to us finding solutions, it's all come back to what is effective in giving the solution. It does not need to be the biggest, wow, brand new, whole world, never seen before idea. It just has to be effective. So that's the first part. And we're talking about creative leadership. Oftentimes than not, we have seen leaders coming to us and say, Mallory, I want to incorporate blockchain into my human resource planning. And I just look at them and I go, do you know what blockchain means? And say, yes, it's a new thing that a lot of people is talking about. And I was like, no, that's not what creative leadership is all about, people. Okay, so taking a step back, it's I think for me, looking at even from a millennials perspective, right, when we look at the younger generation crowd, they don't need their boss to say that, oh, I'm the hip and cool and in trend boss. I don't need that. I just need my boss to give me a concrete sense of direction that my ideas are not shoved into a no, it's not happening, but my ideas is put into a basket where, okay, let's explore and see if it's feasible.
Alia, if you don't mind, I just want to add something that to what Mallory said. I think it's super powerful that she said that it is not the big things. That's really important right there. Most try to chase after that big bang that you can see, but actually the most important things are all these small little slivers. And I have these things that I use with my team quite often. When you have something, break it down to its simplest form, try to achieve that. When you achieve that, that gives you energy. And that's what's most important here. I think it's really great that Mallory said that just now.
Okay, so yeah, so I picked that one up. I tell you, it was an endorsement to me, Mel, when you said something like, you don't have to change everything just because everybody is changing, and come up with new norms and new words just to be able to fit, into that big picture, just to be on par with every other company that's doing it, right? So yes, we do hear so many new names and terminology, and everybody wants to adopt those new names and terminology, not even knowing sometimes what and whether it's appropriate to your company. So that's another thing that that I would echo with you on that. Now, Manoj, I will definitely throw this one to you. With probably among all four of us, probably you've got the most experience handling leadership, or started very young on a leadership role, coming from a very humble background. I read your background, so coming from a very humble background, and today you are a leader dealing with so many big names, big companies, international companies, in fact, right? And you've seen the shift from the normal type of leadership now with everybody talking about creative leadership. Your thoughts, Manoj?
Yeah, see, what I'll do is I'll try to break it into its components: creativity and leadership. So, creativity is all about ideas. And the good thing about ideas is that two ideas, when they mix together, they actually can make 10 ideas. When ideas build upon ideas, they can actually exponentially have more impact on the world, on the organization, on people. Second thing, coming towards leadership, is one of the fundamental things that drive people is when you listen to them, when they feel understood. So if you listen to them and they come up with brand new ideas and you put them together, the outcome is magical. So we are here in on this panel. I am from Canada, you are from Malaysia. We are talking to each other, collaborating to each other in one platform in one time. But if we have to solve a problem, I'm pretty sure all four of us, we will come up with four different ideas to solve that problem. And because we come from different backgrounds, come from different life experiences. And now, if as a leader we can listen to every idea carefully, as Mallory said, it's not going to be shoved into a closet somewhere and not looked at, but really listen to it and put it together and take the best components of those ideas, the solution will be much, much more impactful. And that is what I think creative leadership is all about. I try to, in my experience, uh, uh, even today, most of the companies, most organizations have authoritative leadership. And the reason why that is because the leader who's leading the organization, uh, generally, obviously, they are very experienced, but they think that they have the best ideas and nobody else can match them. And for efficiency purposes or whatever, they just want to implement their own ideas. But what I have found is, in my organization, I even listen to interns ideas, because they have such a fresh perspective, that nobody else can even think about solutions that they come up with. So in my experience, some of the best solutions that I have implemented in my organization and in some other projects for even large corporations have come from interns. And so listening to people, synthesizing their ideas and putting them together, all the best components of diverse ideas, I think is about creative leadership, in my opinion.
We can't hear you earlier.
Sorry, thank you, Manoj. I think I'm going to re-emphasize and paraphrase probably what you just said, because I think listening and feeling the sense of being understood by those who work with you, giving even opportunities to interns, I think is a very crucial point, because today we have a lot of young blood coming in with various ideas, and although they may not have the entire A to Z planned out, but some of the ideas can be incorporated into all our organizations, and I think that is something that we need to give them due credit where it's due. So I think people contribute to ideas. Mallory has said this, and Manoj, you have also picked on this, and Nigesh mentioned a little bit just now on what the organization is. Now let's talk about organization culture then, or rather the teams that you actually have, right? So Mallory works with a group of people. Nigesh, you are internally working with teams to support the external, same as Manoj. So when we talk about creative leadership and the ability to realize innovative solutions, because now that we have mentioned that you picked on all these while listening to people. So, but you must understand that it's very complex, and we keep changing, as I mentioned just now, and Nigesh mentioned as well, how fast things are changing. So if we refer to this change, right, and we refer to the shift of the new approaches that we need to take, which are quite unknown at this moment because we really don't know what is going to happen, but we need to be prepared nevertheless. Can we still create clarity or purpose for your teams? And how do we do that? Not knowing what's going to happen, what kind of change is going to happen. When we say be ready with our teams, let's say we all like to say be creative, but actually when we say be creative, what are we talking about, right? We say think out of the box. We say be creative. We say let it go. We do brainstorming sessions, right? But to each of us, it means totally different, right? So Manoj, let's kickstart off with you.
So one of the things that I always encourage my team is to, whenever they are trying to solve a problem, to work backwards. Okay, meaning focus on what is the result you're looking for, and then say, okay, what is the most efficient step prior to that result that you need to take. So a good example could be, if you need to write a one-page letter, email, whatever, what do you need for that? Like you need the topic, you need the subject, and can you do something where you can think outside the box, where what happens is, like, we are all used to doing things certain way. So we have been taught in school, if you need to write an essay, first you need to learn ABC, and then put the words together, sentences together. And this may be a bad example, but in organizations we also do that, and we have processes that have been adopted for decades and decades, and we never change them, because we say this is the way we have always done things. And that is the killer of creativity. If you work backwards and say, okay, another thing here is you allow your team to make mistakes, because in organizations where mistakes are punished, people will never be creative, because they are always going to be playing safe. So you have to create a culture of saying that, okay, mistakes are okay, but repeated mistakes are not okay, because that means you're not learning anything. If as long as you make mistakes, then you are thinking creatively, you are breaking new ground, and you are trying to figure out new ways of solving problems. And that is what encourages innovation. That is what encourages creativity. And then the other thing is, like, um, uh, celebrating those mistakes which lead to some other wins, because we often miss the lesson that a mistake teaches us. And many times the lesson actually becomes a new innovation in itself. So a good example could be, the other day we were creating a video, and there were some expressions on the face which were not really well suited for social media. So we said, okay, why don't we try something creative, put a cartoon character on top of that picture, and see how it works. And actually people like that, because it became a little bit funny and creative and all that. So these are some of the components of innovation and creativity: making mistakes, and trying things, solving problems backwards, not taking steps one after the other, as we have done for years and years and years.
Okay, so there are two things there. That one is, mistakes. I agree with you. So obviously, Manoj, we have probably the same style of leadership, which is like probably, we started much earlier than Mallory. Mallory is smiling because she knows my age. Yeah, but having said that, I think one is you focus on the end result, which I always say, what is the end result that you want to get, right? And so how do you work towards it? And probably now the other sentence that we need to add in is get creative when you want to reach that end result. Is it possible to add some creativity, like the example that you gave? And of course, the other thing is mistakes. I think we are all encouraging mistakes, but again, do it for the first time, learn from it, and not repeat it, right? So besides these two, Mallory followed by Nigesh, just jump in and see what else do you think that the team should have in terms of pushing it out there when we talk about creative leadership or being creative. And I will go later on to the comments to read some comments, guys.
Yeah. Okay. I like that no mistakes part, because I am somebody that always encourages my team to make mistakes. But now that as I'm actually leading the team, I realize that my mistakes has tolerance as well. Like there's only so much tolerance I have for mistakes. So I learned that this think out of the box concept actually don't really work. Why I say that is because I realized that even though we welcome new ideas from fresh millennials in my interns, my project teams, they're very young. They're like, some of them are 19 and outstanding. And I go, I feel old when compared to a 19-year-old. So I realized that when you say, hey, go creative, go wild, they don't know where to start. They really don't. So they can't be creative if you don't give them a box to begin with. So that's where I realized that, okay, maybe I should give them the box with whatever I know. So this is the box. I challenge you to push the box and just extend what you can extend, but within these guidelines. Because there was one of the comments that mentioned something interesting, that now that you're a baby boomer, I won't say who, you know that why, you understand why the young need to learn to respect a little bit different and things like that. Because it's very true, a lot of times we don't see things from our bosses and supervisors' point of view. Even when we run any culture initiatives, they will tell us that, hey, Mallory, I tried my best, but my boss never listened. Then when I look at the idea, I said, have you ever considered things that your boss's boss need to know? It's like you giving a proposal and say that, oh, this is the best idea in the world, but it's going to cost you 5 million. Which boss in the right mind would put their head and salary and title and job on the line and say, we're going to fight for this 5 million ringgit of your proposal? You got to be realistic about it, right? So sometimes even if that's where the box come in. So sometimes when you have this box, they know that, okay, this is my budget ceiling. This is who I need to impress. This is the results I need to cover. This is the stakeholder I cannot make upset. Then they will know how to challenge it within that. So my style has changed a little bit now to, instead of creativity, it's more of you just extend the box. I'm happy with extending the box.
Okay, so we're going to extend the box there. And Nigesh, why not you jump in here? Because I think Mallory has given it from a point of view where you're talking or dealing with those who are much in the from a younger perspective, younger point of view of them coming into an organization and then starting to make the changes and starting to be creative in that sense. So what may be creative to them may not be creative to us bosses. So I am on that page with you, Mel, because you have no idea. My patience is equally thin as a boss. Nigesh, you go, because you are like the meat in a sandwich, right? So you've got bosses and you've got people below you, right? So basically you are running the sandwich. So go.
So I love what both Manoj and Mallory has covered, and I also love what's coming on the content, the comments as well. So as they were talking, I was thinking about how I practice myself with my team, and I think there's this very key importance when you are a person in a leadership position. And when I say leadership position, you're a person who can actually help move things along. So Mallory is absolutely right when you say that you can't just go and tell a person that, hey, I need you to do this project, go nuts. You cannot do that, because exactly what Mallory said will happen, because they just won't know where to start and they will come up with so many different things. So I think a very key important role that we as individuals, as leaders per se, play, or if we are in that position, is okay, I'm going to try to help define what this box could be. And that's important, that word could be, because as much as we say that we want to give an end goal, even we do not know that. Sometimes we're making gut decisions. We're not really sure if that gut decision is going to be the right thing or not. So we, based on experience, based on what we've done, based on considering different stakeholders, whether above, below, your clients, whomever, you make that gut choice and say that, hey, this is a possible scope of work. All right. So why don't you start thinking about how we can get there? And here's the next important part. When we say how we can get there, as people, as leaders who actually want our team to be successful, it's very easy for us to quickly jump in and say, oh, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. But where are you giving them space then? Right? So you have to kind of play the facilitator role there and kind of tell them, look, have you thought of this? What do you think about this? So that they make the decision, they get creative. You kind of work their creative bone towards that scope of work that they're doing. So that's one part of it. The other part of it, which I hold very, very important to the team that I have, or anybody I work with, is I say develop this sense, which is the sense of ownership. And when I say ownership, is own your space. Don't just own your work, own your space. When you say own your work, that means you're just going to say, okay, my job is to actually design the software. So hence, I'm going to design the software. But if you own your space, I am a software designer. I want to make this solution the best solution possible. But I am dealing with this person, this stakeholder. There's someone else who's feeling pain, which I'm trying to help. And you're going to start thinking, what else can I do? What else can I do? How else can I do this? That's owning the space. And when you start thinking that way, your thought is not just vertical, it starts going lateral completely as well. And then the final thing here that I want to mention is, if someone, like I'm speaking from my experience here, but if you come into a position that you are going to lead a team, or you're going to lead a function, or you're going to lead a project, you always have to think this in your mind as well. How am I going to put myself out of a job? I think that's important, because you have to think that in future, I need to remove myself from this position because someone else needs to come in here with a whole different thought process, different mindset, different sort of ideas to bring this to the next step. I'm only going to be relevant until a certain point. My experiences, my skills are only going to help to a certain point. So what are the steps that I need to do to set things up so that the team gets better and better and better, the processes get better and better and better, and the end result, we may have formed, or we may have said this could be where we headed to, but it ends up being somewhere a lot more better. So I think it's those three key things that you really have to look at, whether in an organizational standpoint or whether you as an individual came into that sort of a leadership position. And I also like that comment about that whole baby boomer thing as well, which is, it's just true. I mean, as you grow, it's a funny irony there. As you grow, you kind of mature. And you kind of start understanding. But at the same time, how each generation or each person based on their experiences grow is different. So what maturity is, yes, we kind of come to an equilibrium, but it's still different.
Sorry, can I just jump in one thing really quickly? I really like the word ownership here, but I really got to emphasize on this word ownership, right? A lot of people think ownership is I own the space, like what you mentioned, you guys own the space, own idea, but don't forget, you got to own the mistakes too. You have to own the failure, you have to own the mistakes, because a lot of time they don't. They expect everybody else to clean up after them. And then I'm like, but it's your project. You got to take responsibility on what goes right and what goes wrong and learn from it.
Okay, I
I'm-
like where this is going. Yeah, Nigesh, go ahead. I'll let you have another sentence or
Yeah.
two.
So it's good that Mallory kind of mentioned that as well. So I think that most bosses, or if you want to say anybody who leads a team or anybody who's leading anybody, and everybody was talking about this making the mistakes thing, right? So it's fine to make mistakes, but I think the biggest value, and especially when you say ownership of mistake, is what are you going to suggest to get out of the mistake? You made the mistake, so now what? Right? You're not going to just say, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Sorry. It's sorry, I made a mistake. This is what I've done, but this is what I think we can do to get past that. That's important.
Okay, so coming back to Mallory, before I say hi to some of you, so just keep cool there. I saw a very critical word there, and the word is not creative, neither is it leadership, but it's cake. I'm coming back to the word cake. So having said that, I like what Mallory said about thinking out of the box. Now, a little bit of share here that I want to tell you is I have a phobia with this sentence, think out of the box. Simply because in my 22 years of leadership as a CEO, when every time somebody say, allow me to think out of the box, I have to remind them that your box is not supposed to be 30 kilometers or 200 kilometers away, right? So don't go too far, don't go too crazy when you say think out of the box. And then, that's where it leads to all these funny ideas which may lead to failure, no test is done, feedback is not taken into consideration, etc., etc. And then the question then comes back again to what Mallory asked, who is going to clean the mess, right? And when we talk about ownership, again, I actually written the word down, ownership, because we also, out of the three things that you said, I like the word ownership because I think it balances the other two aspects of what you say in taking the ownership and making sure it's all good and proper before you actually allow someone else to lead, to take that space after you to make it better, right? Rather than just leave it as it be and expect someone else to come and start from scratch. Then I don't know where the word leadership belongs if you actually do that. Now, having said that, let's say a few hellos and let's talk. Let's run through some of the comments. Hi to Seni, who has joined us. Anis, you made some comments. I'll read your comments out in a while. Marisa, I think you agreed. Happy Sunday to you too. And I think you agreed with what Mallory's comment was at the very beginning, or rather her definition on creative leadership, right? And so that's what you said, to be useful. And I think the keyword there was effective. And then we had Marisa again coming in to say it's keeping, for her, it's about keeping people excited all the time with different ideas, and the older leaders to listen to the younger ones' ideas, and vice versa. I must stand there for you, and vice versa, because sometimes experience counts. Yeah, Manoj, this is where you're supposed to support me, Manoj.
I support what you said, what you just said. Actually, it's vice versa. It's not
Yeah,
not a one-way thing.
right, yeah, because I mean we save you from all the pitfalls, we have gone through it, so we don't want you to fall through the pitfalls, so we can tell you what works and where you need to tweak it and make it better, right? Yeah. So and Anis comes in again to say she agrees. She thinks creative leadership depends on the effectives, on how well it is accepted, and should have a balance while listening and opening to new ideas. Yes, balance is always good. Then comes the another keyword for today is a baby boomer. And this comes from Sin Fong Chan, who says that he was younger and behaved very differently from senior management and bosses. But as I definitely will say that you probably have matured now and you've started to understand that conservatism has crept in, and Generation X and Y will, well, the next generations will all mature, and we will all, and everyone is complaining, right? I think 5 years ago, we were complaining of some Mallorys. Today, Mallory is complaining about some junior Mallory. So this is going to go on, right? So I think, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of new and innovative ideas. Hence, the topic today is extremely interesting to most of us. And I look forward to seeing more creative leadership. We have a young man here with us today, Yang Ting Lim, who is a student in Monash, if I'm not mistaken, or Sunway, agreeing with Mallory. Creativity should start from our internal organization culture and choose the effective strategies to stand out rather than follow others' creative idea and say we are creative. I think you're referring to a little bit of plagiarism here. But having said that, sometimes we also don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we just make things better. It's what's doable and, how you want to tweak it, I suppose. So yes, thank you, Yanting. Then Izwan, my friend, is in, and he says one way of looking at what creative leadership is the ability to leverage on the team's strength while looking which area of gap to be nurtured and which to be put aside. So yeah, so this is probably going into one area of the expertise here, which is the SWOT analysis, trying to see where creativity lies, where are the strengths of your own teammates and people, which is actually very, very crucial. Now, Husni, another friend of mine, has come in to say creative leadership means having an open environment that nurtures innovation and promotes creativity, but with a firm direction and a mission. So the goals and the objectives are set very, very clearly before you say, let's get started. That's what Husni is referring to. And if you want to know more of what Husni is saying, Husni has very graciously offered cake to those who would like to have a cup of coffee with him. He is willing to buy you the cake to make it more clearer and give you examples of creative leadership as Husni is with a bank. Now, having said that, Husni, on behalf of everyone here who is going to reach out to you for free cake after this, thank you. Izwan Mallory has put her hand up. Mallory, I'll give you his personal number. Izwan, in encouraging creative leadership, anchoring it towards a common objective or direction may help organizations' objective. Yes, as I mentioned just now, the priorities. I strongly believe in that. So that whatever it's all aligned rather than all over the place. Yes, and Mallory saying that obviously she has matured. And thank you, Muihan. Muihan has come in to say, just wanted to say cake comes in boxes. Okay, thank you. So here's a creativity for you now. So Muihan is a creative leader. So Husni, please take note that creativity cake comes in boxes. So a little bit more creativity there. Probably the latest types of cakes will do. We thank you in advance. Manoj is a little bit too far, but Nigesh and Mallory will have it on his behalf. Right, and Yatong comes in again with, hi Yatong, you just come in saying that creative leadership is placing equal importance to right brain, not not just the left brain. Okay, wow, we're getting somewhere here. It's the whole brain leadership and willingness to experiment. And there is no ready-made solution in the VUCA world, which is what Nigesh kicked off by saying on the changes that we will have to adopt and adapt to. Now, having read, this whole thing, and now I'm feeling like I need cake. Let's talk about, since we went on individual, we talked about teams, right? I want to ask a very, very simple, basic question, and I would like to hear what the rest of you who have tuned in is saying as well. Is creative leadership a skill?
Yeah, I think absolutely, it's a skill that develops over time. As we were sort of talking about these youngsters coming in, they have little direction but a lot of energy. That energy needs to be honed in. That energy needs to be given some direction so that they know how the real world works and how you can get buy-in. One of the toughest thing to do in the world is to have another human being agree with your ideas, and that is basically a very core part of leadership. So definitely, as they go through their careers, this skill can be practiced and then perfected. Actually, I don't think it will ever be perfected because the leadership skills continue to develop over time. But yeah, absolutely, I think it's a skill that can be acquired by anybody.
Manoj, hold on, Nigesh,
Yeah, sure.
because I want to ask a continued question. Yeah, Manoj, since you mentioned that, I don't think Mallory and Nigesh is going to say creativity is not a skill, right? So let me add a little bit on so that I would save you some time and you can just go ahead and speak. Now, if you say leadership, creative leadership is a leadership itself is a skill, and creativity in leadership is a skill. Can you tell me, or would you tell me from experience, what are some of the characteristics of the creative leadership?
It's I think characteristics will be curiosity first of all. To see that, hey, is there a better way of doing things? Is there a new way of doing things? If we are not curious, then we will just take the manual somebody else wrote and then just repeat it. And then the courage to try things, because again, as we discussed earlier, when we try something new, there is no certainty it is actually going to work. And if we are taking the ownership of the result, and we try something radical, then we better be sure that we will make it work. Otherwise, we need to we'll need to answer to our bosses and other clients or the customers. So curiosity and courage will be the two key things. And then people skills, because nothing can be achieved by one single person. We have to work together as a team. And as I said, getting buy-in into your ideas is one of the toughest things, whether that is selling your idea inside the organization, outside the organization, above your pay grade, below your pay grade, whatever. Getting other humans to agree to you, especially when you have a diverse team. So people skills, curiosity, and courage, I believe, will be the characteristics of a true creative leader.
Nigesh, go ahead, Nigesh.
Yeah, so maybe I was about to defer to that thought and say that I wouldn't count creative leadership as a skill, because look at leadership itself. That's a state of being, that's a behavioral trait, that's how you kind of practice yourself. And leadership by itself has a mountain of skills that you got to kind of develop yourself towards. I would say creative leadership is just, to me, a naming, because people kind of need namings to kind of make sense of certain situations. Like, you're practicing leadership in this manner, therefore you're being creative, you're being a creative leader. So that's how it kind of comes up. But I think it's creativity, yes, definitely it is a skill. How can you be creative? Some of the things Manoj has mentioned, some of the things Mallory has mentioned, some of the things we have been talking about, that's being creative. How can you be a leader? Now, that's also another big number of skills that you got to develop to be a leader, right? So I wouldn't immediately say creative leadership is a skill, because I'm afraid that if someone says, okay, I want to be a creative leader, how can I be a creative leader, and try to go and look for quick hacks, that's not going to come out. So that's my thought about it.
So are you saying that it then comes with the territory, comes with the experience, it comes with having somebody leading you and guiding you, and then you find your platform, you find your landing ground, and then you start with all these trials and errors, and then you pick up those skills eventually, because everyone nowadays say I'm very creative. No, I mean, not me, but they basically referring to themselves, saying I'm very creative, I can be creative. One of the requirements in a job specs today, JDs, is creativity, right? But creativity can also go backwards, or it may not be even the robbers are quite creative nowadays, right? Scammers are quite creative as well. So so when we talk about creative leadership, okay, so that's your point of view.
So I actually wanted to give you a little bit of an example in this situation.
Go ahead.
So I actually I can't remember who was it who kind of put this comment along the lines that everyone's trying to be creative, they forget that sometimes you kind of need processes to guide that creativity. And I think that's important. I come from an engineering background initially, so I live with that whole thing where great to be creative, but that needs to head somewhere, because if it's going nowhere, it doesn't mean anything. If it doesn't impact, it doesn't create value, it goes nowhere. So the example I want to give is this. Actually, going to your point, Alia, like what you said, is things that you kind of build over time that kind of helps you become this person who's a creative leader. Now, I'm going to take it from a standpoint of leading a team here, instead of a business or instead of a process. So I take it from a team or teams that I form. This is a practice that I use very often. And a key thing is this: when you start building a team, you got to first start understanding each person in the team. It's time consuming, but that is your job. That is your job as a person who's building a team. What skill is that? That is emotional intelligence in there, right? So you got to start learning about each person. How do they operate? How do they converse? How can you listen to them? What is their language? What would actually be their dreams, their goals, their aspirations? How can you kind of give them that motivation to build towards that, but yet have them build towards what the goals and visions of the company is. That's the first step. But then the next step is, okay, when you start putting them through the rigmarole of actually doing the work, doing the tasks, those kind of things, it's not a case of just, okay, I want to empower you. Here you go. Here's a task to do it. No, you've got to understand that each person lives in, and I like this this situational leadership quadrant thing. That's actually a really good way to look at it. Each person lives in a different state of skill, capability, and motivation. And you've got to understand where they are. And based on that, you've got to apply yourself differently. Some you can empower, some you can partner, some you can consult, some you need to direct because they may not yet have the motivation or the capability to do that role, but they may want to do it still, right? So you have to switch how you work through that. And as you work through that, you got to keep your mind on, okay, where the direction, and where are they building the skill? Where can I move them if I need to move them to actually make them feel like they're achieving more? So now just giving you this small little example. This is creative leadership at work. You are creatively thinking as you're moving along, how can I change things around that it's effectively helping everyone move forward and the environment move forward as well.
Mallory, you run a small business, and now although that small business has flourished, has blossomed, has bloomed, and leading into a few countries, so obviously leadership must be, hats off to you, must be very good, yeah? So, and of course you must have injected some form of creativity. So do tell me, what are the characteristics of leadership skills that you think are required or is needed before I actually read you some creative leadership characteristics?
Okay. I think, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I really agree with what Nikesh mentioned about understanding different people. Because when I first started, I have this idea where this is even organizations we work with, they say this is what we want as a criteria of a future leader. So our job is to deliver learning programs to mold them into these sets of criteria, what makes a good leader, future leader, successor, whatever it is of the future. And then we realized when the pandemic hit, all these things kind of go down the drain because some of their top 20 talents, out of 20, maybe 15 of them cannot function in such situations. And the bottom five turn out to be the best five because they're very street smart in handling themselves. The 15 that were, super obedient, very good to the bosses, very good to the companies, were like panicking under pandemic. So with all this situation, we realized that every learning path, so I'm going to talk a bit about the learning and the culture aspect, works differently from different people's perspective and different routes for different people. So with that said, right, there are a lot of things. I won't touch much of the whole characteristics, but it comes down to one keyword called mindset. Because the mindset element really determines whether are you willing to drop your ego of saying that, okay, we cannot do this, to we can try to make things work. Are you willing to accept that after 15 years of holding the realm, maybe it's time I change the way I do things because, 15 years ago, we didn't have this situation, but now we do. And are you willing to accept that I am stuck graduating in an era where this is not how graduation is supposed to be, and this is not how the first job is supposed to be, but I have to find a way to make it work. And all that come back to the keyword here, mindset. And a lot of people think practicing growth mindset is about a set of characteristics or criteria that we need to overcome. But when we work with the talents, we realize that the first key part that a lot of people don't ask them is the strengths. So when it comes to running the business, right, when we first started, like most people, we also had, I'll be very frank, I had a panic mode, like, okay, we're going to go virtual now. And we started doing so many things, trying to make things work. And we realized that, okay, let's take a step back. Let's figure out where our strengths are. And let's enhance that part, just the strength part. Instead of running north, south, east, west and trying to do everything virtually, we just bank on our strengths. And that paid off very well for us. We became very good at arranging process structures for companies who want learning program online, but they do not know where to start A to Z. We became that solution. We became the solution for people that goes, okay, I just want to make things flexible and easy for people to learn. We became the solution. We just play by our strengths of, okay, we are good in creating learning experiences. Let's just do that part. We don't need the best tool, best software, best top-notch investment in the world because, to be frank, we don't have the money to do that either. So we can only do what our resources have, manpower have, and strengths that we do, and we just do that. So if you were to ask me what makes creativity work at wherever you are, it's the firstly is the mindset. Get the mindset right, because you got to drop a lot of egos, you got to drop a lot of you got to raise a lot of things in order to get that happen. And then secondly, just play by your strengths. If you can, a lot of us don't even know how to identify the strengths that we have. So if you can identify that sweet spot and really go at it, you're there.
Very aptly put. Identifying strengths, Mallory, come to me. I'll tell you how to identify. That's my area of expertise. Now, let me read some comments here. Izwan talked about creativity again, should not be limited to something new. Yes, Izwan, definitely. Knowing when to reuse old and existing ideas is also being creative. Yes, I think that one is like you've already got 50% in the bag rather than starting from scratch. Yatong has put it very nicely to say leadership, the approach that he talks about, accept rebels and badasses in the team as long as they are acting in the interest of the team and mission. I don't know how well that is going to go down with some old-fashioned bosses or people who do not have bosses who do not have a lot of patience, Yatong. But yes, we may, if that brings out the best in them, then probably we will have to make do with them, right? Izwan says creative to a certain extent is a skill that can be developed, practiced, and improved. And likewise, if not continued, practiced, and used, can slowly fade away. So yeah, so if you don't keep using it, of course, it becomes something we say obsolete. Yatong talks again about leadership and says that you have to live in the future and be creative. Definitely, because it's a game changer for tomorrow. Yes, and Anis comes in again with each person works differently. We need to recognize. Yes, we're talking. We will relate that to Mallory's strength just now, and mindset. Yes, Mallory mentioned about the mindset. Now, very quickly, guys, before I came on to this last night, I sent out a quick question to a few leaders, emerging leaders as well as existing leaders who I sort of look up to regardless of the age, but they are holding leadership positions. And one of the questions that I asked was actually what are the characteristics of a creative leader, since most of them were on the same page with you when it came to being creative leaders. And Nigesh, there were quite a few who, were on the same page with you, saying it's all about the leadership first. Don't worry about the creativity, because if you are a good leader, somehow whatever you do, whatever you learn, whatever you explore, it will flow into creativity without you even realizing it, right? So I must tell you that whatever they have said is going to be added on to whatever you said, because none of you covered the same, and which is very interesting to me. So let me read it out for you, and if you would like to, take note, that would be good. So some of the creative leadership characteristics that we're talking about here, from their point of view, were having high standards of personal ethics, big people without pettiness, gut over pressure. I think somebody mentioned about the word gut, resilience in defeat, brilliant ideas but not safe plodders, a capacity of hard work and midnight oil. Yes. So I think that goes back to a lot of Melody is thing, because she and I have been looking into some things previously past midnight, trying to be creative. Yeah, Mel. And of course, I think one thing that we all want in a leader is the charisma, the charm, and the persuasiveness to ensure that your people or you enhance the so-called creativity skill. Now, having said that, I would like to go into, we are running into probably the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, right? And we have concluded on, or rather we have some understanding on creative leadership, what it means to you guys, what it means for teams. How do we cultivate? We looked even into the characteristics of leadership, right? But it is a philosophy and an act. And I'm sure, Manoj, this question is going to, kickstart with you. Creative leadership is a philosophy, and it's also an act, and it develops and helps us to realize the innovative ideas that, when we share our ambition, you mentioned that, and improvise the word through enterprises or your businesses, right? So in your years of experience, can you probably share at least one, one incident, one story. We all love stories, where if you either was it a mindset change or was it a shift, or is that something that you picked up, something you learned along, where you can define and say, I used creative leadership and got this results. Right. So it will help the rest of us to actually explore the area that probably we have not looked into yet.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Manoj.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I will touch upon some personal projects that I was working on, very complex artificial intelligence related projects. These were patented technologies, and millions of dollars were riding on the success of these projects. And we had several PhDs. Even though I'm myself, I have a very humble educational background, and I was responsible for hiring and sort of working with multiple PhDs in their field. So it was quite intimidating from that aspect as well. But as the pressure of sort of delivering the outcome, and the deadlines were approaching, uh, I the sort of the uh, the default mode of authoritative leadership comes out, right? And even though the project was successful, I found that my team started disintegrating at an emotional level, because I came across as very aggressive and very one-sided, in the sense that I listened to those ideas, but then, as Mallory pointed out, I did not implement them, or I did not acknowledge them in a way that needed to be acknowledged. Gave myself excuses: oh, we don't have time, we need to rush, and we need to deliver this. But then later on, I realized that the long term effect of that project was a disintegrated team, and in order for me to bring them together, I really had to take steps patiently to win back the trust of people and listen to them. So from that point onwards, no matter what the deadline was, no matter what the consequences were, I always made an effort to listen to ideas, solicit feedback. Obviously, I agree with everybody's comments that as a leader, we have to give a sense of direction. We cannot just say, okay, come up with crazy ideas, but we have to give a sense of direction, and within that, those parameters, listen to the ideas, and then um, first and foremost, whatever happens with business, whatever happens with the organization, make your people feel heard, make your people feel important. Because I also agree with Nigesh. One of the key goals for a leader should be to work themselves out of a job, because you need to move into a new role, and then you need to make sure that the foundation doesn't fall apart when you move up, right? So all these things taught me a very big lesson in life. And actually, the thing is, this lesson was learned in a professional environment, but it actually works in personal life as well, even with my kids, because I then realized, rather than being authoritative father, I need to really listen to the kids to make them understand what I'm trying to say to them is for their own good, etc. So that was a major shift for me, like this very, very stressful project, as you said, burning the midnight oil, weekends and everything. But the long term effects of that really shifted my thinking.
Okay, so yes, so you've quite of put it out there that there's a lot of hard work behind as well. So it's not just coming up with ideas and solutions and saying let's do this and let's do that, but dealing with people firstly is no easy feat. I'm sure all four of us that deal with people all the time, and people management is a leadership skill that we all need to have, and it's not easy, right? Yeah, so having said that, Nigesh, from your experience, you need to be creative because you're in the digital space.
Yep.
Right, and which is moving super fast, and everyone's looking into this space as we move ahead. So you and Mallory are moving into spaces which are picking up like abundantly in a big amount, in abundance, and also at a speed lightning space, as I call it. So Nigesh, what do you think when you talk about leadership, creativity, leadership for you. You have mentioned all the things that you needed to do and the traits of good leaders, being a good leader. But what have you practiced or something that has worked with your creativity and you have seen results, whether it's personal basis or for the company?
Okay, so I'm going to share 3 snippets of story of 3 very big events that happened throughout my career. And actually, one of these stories goes to the comment that Hong Lee kind of put about that whole rebels and badass thing. So that's the first story, actually, when I was an engineering coordinator at Texas Instruments. This was many years ago. I was put in charge of an area and a group of people who were the most experienced, the most skilled technical people in the whole factory, but also the ones with the worst attitude, right? So they were placed there like as if they were the junkyard of people don't want to deal with them, so they were placed there. And when I got there and they were reporting to me, I think one thing that I decided to look at, and this was a difference I learned from the experience of my elders. And so this is where I wanted to say, if there's anything, do not discount what you can learn from people who've been there, because there's so much they can teach you. And one of the things they can teach you is how to stay resilient and not lose your nerve. So learning from that, I kind of wanted to see what is causing this. And I decided to see what was the unfulfilled need that each individuals had. That was the key thing of looking at what was this unfulfilled need that each individual had. And I needed to fulfill that. And if I fulfilled that, then they will buy into whatever ideas that we're going to put forward and whatever direction we want to move towards. Of course, at the same time, I wasn't being a pushover either. If they did something wrong, I would reprimand. So I had to practice this 2 sides of a coin as I moved along. And it worked, because what ended up happening is each one of them ended up becoming technical leaders in less than a year. So that's one snippet of story. The second snippet of story was, I know we're not supposed to say the word so much, but I do not know how to put context to the word, to the situation without saying it. It's when the pandemic hit, right? I'm only going to say it once. When it hit and all of us were going into a lockdown. So it was going to be a scenario where our business in Leadernomics was very face-to-face. Very face-to-face. It's dealing with people, consulting others, training others, all face-to-face contact. And we were already at that state where, oh gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to go into not seeing anybody. Everything is going to be virtual. They say it's 2 weeks, but it could end up being a very long time, which it ended up being a very long time. I remember that morning, 18th of March, before everything kind of closed down. I came in, 10 a.m., my CEO, Roshan, walked in as well. He looked at me, he asked me to come into a room for a while, and he asked me this question: what are we going to do? I've got this crazy idea that we can just piece together a few people who can do these few talks here and there, and we can provide a solution to everybody. But I don't know how to get this out to everybody, and we have an opportunity to work with this body. I can't say the name, but we have an opportunity to work with this body. I thought about it for a while. I could have discounted it and said, this is crazy. How can we prep anything in just a day? Because we wanted to deploy it literally the next day. But then I thought for it for a while. I looked outside, I saw my team there, and there's one thing that we've practiced effectively with the team, and that came to bear, that no one takes anything to ego or personally. It's just a task. Focus on the task, and if we do that right, we feel good. But no one is trying to kill the other person. No one's trying to make the other person feel bad. I called them all into the room and said, look, we've got this challenge. Here's an idea. And we came up with this idea of 52 days. 52 days we can produce each day 1 hour. There's 2 times it happens in a day. We have different people speaking. It's open to the public. It's supported by this body, and we put it out there. Can we do this? Everyone said, okay. We sat at it the whole day as we were trying to clean up the office and get ready. We were there and we were the last to leave. But at the end of the day, we had that 52 days worth of these different talks and all that we can deploy. And we actually ended up deploying it the following week on a Monday. So that was actually one of the situations where it was a crazy idea. We came in, we had the right mix in the team. Everyone put their heads in, and voila, it came out, and we deployed it. And what we ended up creating, and this is what I say, the result of good leadership and creativity with direction. We actually created a culture for people during lockdown. those who came and joined that event throughout, okay, we only did 32 days versus 52, but we started getting feedback like, hey guys, don't end this, because now it's become a culture. Every morning after we go through that 1 hour, we have this team huddle, we talk about what we've learned, and then we continue through the day. That's great to hear. So this is results, a great impact and results. And the final story I wanted to share was actually about the product I lead right now. It's a digital product that I lead right now. And this is actually going to something both Manoj and Mallory have been talking about. I like to believe that mistakes and kind of getting on top of it, learning from it and becoming better is this visual of, imagine you have a straight line which is going up like that, like a triangle going up like that. And on top of that, you're drawing waveforms going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And as you go further, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That's the idea of when you make mistakes, you're going to go on two ends of the spectrum. But your job is to learn, take note what really worked, what were the good points and what were the bad points. And as you move forward, you reduce the size of that wave smaller and smaller and smaller. And what you end up getting is you're doing a lot of good with very little bad. So that is how you should practice mistakes. How does this link to the story? So when we brought in this product that we have, it's 2 years ago, but we only really started going to market early last year. Again, it's my CEO who came into the picture with this crazy idea saying that, look, let's get 100,000 subscribers into our system within 3 months. And at that point, I was coming in after finishing up another role to take over that role. And he told me that, and I was like, oh God, 3 months, 100,000. And he had this list of 100 different ideas written on this glass wall. And he's saying, let's get different people to kind of lead different things. I had my reservations on it, but this was the thought I had. And even my team had the reservations on it. They were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to lead all these different people who have different roles, but they still need to do this extra project? But I kind of stopped and thought about that. Look, what's the worst that can happen here, right? We don't get the subscribers, sure, but do we end up closing shop? No, we don't. But we've got 3 months and 100 ideas to test out, to decide that when we move into 2021, how can we set the direction and for the business? So we did it. I'll flatly say we didn't do a great job at it. We failed at close to all the ideas, but it taught us so many different ways how to do something wrong and right, that it allowed us to craft a business plan, a method, and a process for the team that now we can proudly say that the team is achieving record numbers never achieved before when we even brought the product in. And even for the business unit that we're sitting in itself, which is Leadernomics Digital, we can say this has been a great year. And it's been actually a challenging year for most. So these are 3 different stories, one dealing with people, one dealing with the right mix, and one dealing with ideas and mistakes, and how you actually can apply this creativity and resilience and leadership to actually help you come to a positive direction.
Okay, Digesh, I think it's also a little bit of pressure put on with the situation out there, and that fast moving, the need to move very, very fast, very, very quickly as well, which sometimes gives you that jump start, or rather you are forced to run even before they say jump, and you don't even get to ask how high, you just go and do it. And that was the situation I think a lot of people were caught in on the 18th of March 2020, right, when we all went into a lockdown. And I remember Mallory and I and a few others having the same sort of conversation, as we were part of Tulip's movement at that point of time, and we had to quickly think of how to assist the people out there as well. So I'm sure, putting Tulips aside, I'm sure for your company, Mel, you would have had to think, on a very, within that, although you said you probably at that moment, I'm going to use back your own words, and stretch your box, right? All angles of that box, and maximize as much as you can without letting it break or burst, right? So tell us your story, Mel.
Okay, I think Nigesh kind of covered a lot of angles that I wanted to cover, so I gotta turn things up a bit. Okay, but good stories, Nigesh. Thank you so much. But yes, I didn't handle the 18th of March very well, honestly. We had a plan. Nothing worked.
But
And
you
then,
wished me happy birthday. So
yes, that one. I did that right. I did that part right. But everything else, I just didn't know what to do. So I'll just share with you two key lessons I've learned with this creative leadership. Okay, the first lesson I've learned is that it's never a no permanently. So going back to whatever I shared about strengths, right? So since we started, I know that one of my key strengths is being able to come out with great experiences in learning. All right. And I always said, okay, so whenever I meet a client, I always say, okay, let's go this. And then we put it all out. And then when I realized when I first started, out of probably 10 clients to go to, probably 10 would say no. Not because we were the ideas are bad. It's just that they have so many reservations about us being young, us being youth, and then whether you understand, do you know the market, a lot of things in between that we hear a lot of times. Actually, as somebody said to me, oh, do you think it'd be good if you can maybe powder your hair a bit or something to make you look older? And it's a real remark that I found such traumatizing until today. I say, who wants to look old? Everybody wants to look young, okay? But anyway, that aside. But it did come with a lot of reservations because the ideas were a bit too, and this was about, I started about 9 years ago. So this was about 9 years ago when maybe the industry were not that ready yet. And I also think that perhaps companies were looking at L&D or learning in a very different way compared to what they see today. But fast forward that, I didn't really change the way I see what my strengths were. I just cut it to maybe instead of 10 things, I cut to one pie and then one slice, then maybe half a pizza. And then after that, I give you the whole pizza. So I kind of just broke it into different segments. And then that's where I really learned that when you talk about creative leadership or just creativity as a whole, right? It's one thing to shove your ideas to everybody because you know it's a good idea. But it's another thing to understand when is the right time to give which idea to who, even though they're all effective, but it's sometimes timing. So I didn't really tune off my strengths or change or pivot entirely. I just broke it down to slices and give different parts of the slices where needed. Which brings to, but today, fast forward 9 years later, a lot of things have changed in the learning development space. And with that said, now I can give you a whole slice of pizza and people still want the second slice of pizza. So the world has changed a little bit. So speaking of which, I learned a very important lesson that a lot of times it's hard to get rejected too many times, but you learn that, okay, maybe not now, but it's never a no permanently. So your ideas, so it's very important to just never shove an idea, but perhaps put it aside and see when is the right time to launch certain ideas. Back to what Nige shared about the digital element as well. Maybe just 2 years ago wasn't a perfect time to launch all 100 ideas, but if you launch it today, maybe out of 150 can run. So it's just a different timing for different situations. So that's the first thing I've learned. The second thing I've learned is that this word mindset, it's a lot easier said, but it's very hard to do. And to be honest, I've been talking about and sharing growth mindset to many organizations for the longest period of time. And until as of late, I really realized that I myself only really practice and cultivate this growth mindset thing when the situation happened, when March 18 happened. Reason being because we are always busy moving. We're always busy executing. We don't actually take time to pause and reflect back and go, okay, out of all the 100 ideas that we've rolled out, what we learned, what we worked, what we didn't work, what we shoved aside, what we took up now, what can we learn from all these things? And what can we change about the way we work to fit into situations better? Because we'll be running things so automatically, so busy, so rushing. We everybody try to make ends meet. You don't really stop. So when the situation happened, I had nothing to do at one point, so I just stopped. And when I stop, I really look back and I go, oh wow. So I've actually been so busy, I didn't really look at the whole list of ideas that have been given to me. I've been so busy that I haven't really sat down and said, when's the last time we actually sit down and come out with a new product? Just for fun. When did we had a creative fun evening that we just sit down and throw things around and say, hey, let's see what we can do with this? Never. When we were kids, you're always playing and imagining things and coming up with fun ways to make our life entertainment before tablets and iPad were a thing. And now, we don't do that anymore. When was the last time we sit down and find ways to tear apart laptops and computers? Never. So with that said, I realized that a very important lesson I learned with this growth mindset thing, you have to make time for it. It doesn't come with it. You have to make time. You can go through 20,000 experiences, but if you don't make time to really sit down and do it, you can never be able to experience what growth mindset is really about. So that's the second most important thing I've learned with it. So it's a very short story, but two key lessons is number one, there's never a no permanently. It's just moving with time. And secondly is that make time for mindset, make time to actually sit down and grow. It comes with age and size, but it doesn't come with your mind. You have to make time for it.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to what both of you had shared, Nigesh and Mallory, especially before I asked Manoj an interesting question that came to my mind is Mallory was using the word being creative in having that mindset, right? I think that what we see here, Manoj, maybe you can also add in because you're abroad, right? We saw a huge amount of creativity kicking into place during the lockdown, right? From people changing their way they did things to businesses to online, the way they shopped. The people who never shopped online started to shop and being creative in their home. The way they addressed their health, their lifestyle changing, and maneuvering many things, from lifestyle to their needs to their wants to the way they did things. And of course, the huge change and being creative came a lot with the computers itself, as you mentioned, because we were all going online. Suddenly everyone was talking about lighting and cameras, and prior to this, when we used computers, we never had third screen, fourth screen, right? Ring lights, and suddenly this was like going crazy. Everybody was trying to be extra creative and sharing this. I consider all this even part of the creativity club, where and then everyone was getting into exercise mode, so everyone started to be very creative doing exercises at home. So everyone then pivoted and started to do yoga online, Zumba online. So when we talk about creativity and we talk about leadership, I think the spectrum doesn't just end at within that four walls of the word leadership, because creativity is something that we all, whether we realize or not, with the changing times, especially the last 18 months to 2 years, we've all had no choice but to be creative in order to survive many a times, right? So, but when on the other hand, on the contrary, does creativity, kill? Is creativity something that, sometimes too much of creativity, is that an overkill? Manoj, what do you think? Has that ever
I
happened?
don't
Like
think
you
so.
tried
No,
something?
I don't think so. See, I look at the world at a macro level. If you study anthropology, history, human evolution, we are the most dominant species for one reason, which is adaptability and creativity. Right? That is the only reason why we have been able to overcome. We are not very powerful as compared to the tigers and the lions, but we are ruling the planet because we are creative, right? So I don't think there is such a thing as a too much creativity. And as we said earlier, when when we are pushed against the wall, then we can always find new solutions, especially when we are pushed against the walls and the norms are not solid anymore, meaning those rules and regulations that used to be immovable, they all of a sudden vanish. Then we can everybody accepts those crazy ideas, which actually are certifiable crazy before the some crisis happens. Good example is telehealth. I was involved in multiple projects on healthcare side, and as soon as you mention telehealth, everybody's radar signals, oh no, security, privacy, there is no way we can do it. The experience is not going to be good. And now within 2 weeks, the whole every country changed to telehealth, because those norms and regulations did not make sense. So I think there is should not be a limit. Rather, we should always work in a mode of, hey, the rules do not apply. These are just made up rules we are generally following. So let's see if you want to break some rules again within limit, what kind of efficient ways you will come up with. So in my opinion, I will say there is no limit to creativity.
Okay, now we're down to the last, very, very few minutes. And if I could just get you guys to just leave us all with, before I do the closing, right? So Nigesh, Valerie, and finally Manoj. So let's start with you, Nigesh. If you could leave the audience here today, who has really, really been very, very supportive of this topic today and this subject that we are talking about, creative leadership, what would you want to tell everyone, including myself, to take home as something that Nigesh has left us with?
If one thing, and I hope that everyone has got this opportunity even in these trying times, so whenever it is, there is nothing on earth that you cannot learn. That is something really important. There's nothing on earth that you cannot learn, but it means nothing if you don't put it to practice. Right? So if you can learn anything and everything, but you got to put it to practice for it to mean something. So I'd say that.
Mel?
I think I'll leave everyone with this quote: focus on daily progression, not some days perfection. Because a lot of times we try to wait till it's a perfect idea before we roll things out, but perfection is not going to come. So what you need to do is just roll out, test, pivot, and then adapt. So that's my message.
And Manoj?
I will say no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Ah, that's very, very nice. Right, guys, thank you very, very much for that, that the sharing today, your words of wisdom. I think mostly I enjoyed was the ideas that came across on creative leadership, what creative leadership is all about, whether it is for you individually, an organization, or in the things that you have done. So if I could summarize in my own words of what you guys have said, there are three things that came to mind when you guys were speaking. One of it is to harness new ideas, right? So harness new ideas, otherwise we will all be very, very stagnant. The second one is disrupt the status quo. Please disrupt the status quo, because that's where your creativity starts and it kicks off. And the last but not least, we were all along, I think, for many years in the orchestra mode. Let's change it and spice it up to a jazz ensemble. So with that, I leave everyone with the messages that all of us have shared with you. And be creative, go out there. But of course, as Nigesh pointed out, leadership is leadership on its own. So practice the leadership and enhance your leadership skills even before you go into creativity. Remember that what Mallory has also said, creativity is sometimes within your own box. You do not have to think very far out of the box. And don't forget what Manoj had said, adaptability and creativity will also add to you being creative. Once again, signing off, this is Alia. Thank you very, very much on Women Empowerment, Global Women Empowerment 2021. Have a good Sunday, everyone. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to my fellow panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.